Watching the Packers is like a shiving. Do the Giants have any wide receivers living? The Browns and Bills played in Detroit. Minnesota fell back to earth, which is toit. And to everyone, happy Thanksgiving. Welcome to the Mishpo. So yeah, it's Thanksgiving week. I haven't come up with a name for this episode yet, but it'll be something like Gobble, Bobble, Football, something with the turkey or whatever. But it'll be the third iteration of that. And as you can see, I'm in a new location. I'm inside of a car. Bree is driving. We're on our way to her mom's for Thanksgiving, so that's pretty fun. Yeah, that was a fun limerick, and we're going a little bit throwback. Since we're on the road, I didn't want to have to rely on internet, and so we're doing a little bit of a throwback, which is I printed off all of my information, including all the matchups, and I messaged a good number of you and got the matchup screenshots so I could do this well. And so throwback to when we used to use paper. Also, I hope this doesn't fall down at all during this. It already has a little bit just having it set up, but yeah. But before we get into the trades, as per tradition with any good mishpo, we have to have a beverage, and we just happen to have soda here. Trust me, it's a soda. So I'm just going to crack into this soda here. Okay, just a little bit. Crack into it. And yeah. What a good soda. Trust me, it's a soda. Anyway, we passed the trade deadline, and so with that, there were a bunch of trades that took place, and we'll go through them. Derek traded David Montgomery, Deontay Johnson to Caleb for James Conner, KJ Osborne, and a 2023 13th. So, I do think James Conner and David Montgomery are pretty equal, especially with Khalil Herbert being on IR. David Montgomery obviously will get a lot of the work. And Deontay and KJ are also kind of similar. Pittsburgh doesn't have that great of a passing offense at the moment, especially for Deontay Johnson, as Kenny Pickett's eyes are for, what's that guy's name? The other guy. I can't think of his name at the moment. But, yeah, the 13th is nice. It's not that great of a pick, but it's a pick. So I would say this trade is probably even-ish. Honestly, might lean a little bit towards Derek. So next, Bruce traded Lamar Jackson, Brandon Ayuk, and a 2023 fifth to Michael for Davante Adams. Well, Bruce, I believe now his quarterback is Jalen Hurts, and so he didn't really need Lamar. And Lamar has kind of been a bit disappointing lately, so obviously you can use that for some nice trade packages. And Brandon Ayuk, I think he's a pretty solid receiver. He scored, I think, twice this past week, so that's pretty good. And then the 2023 fifth is not a bad pick at all. It's definitely a very good pick. We'll get a good player with that. And then obviously Davante Adams is pretty good as well. So, this probably is pretty even. Bruce is definitely trading for the run this year. And Michael definitely got some good pieces out of it. And I can't remember. I believe he's out of it for the moment in terms of playoffs. But, yeah, this probably favors both players. So, next, Bruce traded Michael Gallup and Gus Edwards to Derek for Darnell Mooney and a 2023 ninth. Gallup is pretty solid. I think Mooney is better. However, and Gus Edwards currently injured, but when he does get back to full health, should he get back to full health, he should take over that starting role in Baltimore. So, and then the ninth obviously is pretty good. So, I honestly would prefer the Darnell Mooney in the ninth side. So I would say Bruce won this trade, but it could still work out for both players. Next, Lincoln traded Gerald Gerald Everett to Fiala for Chase Claypool. Gerald Everett, obviously tight end, has been pretty solid this year, but as of late has not been great, and dealing with injury, I believe, at the moment. And then Chase Claypool, newly acquired by Chicago, hasn't quite been involved in that offense quite yet, but hopefully he will be involved soon for Fiala's sake, or Lincoln's sake. So I guess, this is probably pretty good. I believe Lincoln's other tight end is Mark Andrews, so you don't really need another tight end, or need Gerald Everett. So I guess I would say it probably works out for both of you, because Fiala, you need a tight end with Kyle Pitts going down to the IR. And the final trade of the season, which is kind of fitting because the first trade this season was made between State Farm and I traded $1 FAB to State Farm for $1 FAB. So I would say it's a pretty even trade. Obviously, both of us getting $1 FAB. I did have, I believe, slightly more FAB, or slightly less FAB than State, so my FAB is worth, each singular FAB is worth more than each singular FAB of State Farm. Pretty even. But that's been all the trades. And I'll take a quick sip of my soda, and we will jump into last week's matchups. First up, me versus Bruce. I believe this is the biggest blowout of the week. I did have some decent performances on my side. Spoiler alert, I did lose, of course. Justin Fields had 22.62, so pretty solid. Brandon Cooks had 10, and then Treylon Burks had 18.1, and Wandale, before his ACL injury, had 19.4, so pretty good stuff. And then I had a bunch of duds for the rest of my team. Over on Bruce's side, Jalen Hurts, 22.2, very good stuff. Tony Pollard, 36.9, very, very good. Newly acquired Devontae Adams, 33.1, so it's already paying off. Also newly acquired Darnell Mooney, 12.9, so I'd say that's paying off too. Overall, Bruce got the win, 139.55 to my 90.97. Which will bring us on to the next matchup, which was Lincoln versus Fiala. A bit closer, but also still not all that close. Couple key players. Dak did pretty good, 20.64, so pretty solid. Christian McCaffrey, always very good, 17.6, and I don't even think he scored a touchdown, so could you imagine if he did? 17.2 from Latavius Murray, now the lone back over in Denver, and now that Melvin Gordon's been released, and the Chiefs' defense not bad, 11.25. Over on Fiala's side, 13.3 from Gibson, 13.8 from Devonta Smith, 18.1 from D-Hop, and 21.5 from the Commanders. So very good stuff over there. Fiala got the victory, 122.28 to Lincoln's 90.39, which will move us on to Michael versus Sam. This one was, I believe, the highest scoring total matchup of the week, with both teams above 125.8. So, over on Michael's side, 16.46 from Lamar, not great, and also not great from Dalvin, 7.2. But what was great was Devin Singletary, 17.7, 16 from Brandon Ayuk, 15 from Amon-Ra, so pretty good stuff. And the Patriots defense continuing to be great, 19.75 from them. Over on Sam's side, Marcus Mariota, 17.74, 27.6 from Najee Harris. So maybe he's not dead like I thought. 23.8 from T. Higgins, 35.5 from Travis Kelce. That guy's really good. And 17.7 from Zeke and 16.5 from the Ravens defense. Sam got their victory, 160.54 to 125.81 for Michael, which will bring us on to our next matchup, which is, of course, T-Corn versus Adam. Two of the higher, well, actually, T-Corn used to be one of the high teams, but I believe he's on like a 6 or 7 game losing streak right now, so that's not too fun. This one was also decently high scoring. T. Gordon's Justin Herbert, 20.7, 24.4 from Jamal Williams, and 31 from Amari Cooper, 31.3, I guess, to be exact. So pretty good stuff. Over on Adam's side, 28.7 from Joe Burrow, 19 points from Josh Jacobs, 15.9 from Pat Fryermuth, and some other pretty good performances throughout. Adam got the victory, 129 even to 111.25 for T-Corn, which will bring us on to the next matchup, which is Derek versus Brian, a lower scoring matchup. Over on Derek's side, James Conner for 12.4, 14.8 from Steph Diggs, so hopefully he'll do better this week. He could have done a lot worse considering what they could have played in. And 13.7 from Juwan Johnson. He's been doing really well lately. Over on Brian's side, 25.36 from Derrick Henry, 21.2 from Chris Olave, finally getting it going with Andy Dalton. In the end, Brian got the victory, 104.04 to Derek's 73.08, which will bring us on to our next matchup, which is, of course, Colin versus State Farm. Fix it. Over on Colin's side, was not able to get Kyler Murray out of there, so you did get a 0 from him. But Allen Robinson did pretty well, 14.7, pretty well for him. Got himself a touchdown. George Kittle, of course, is pretty solid, 24.4 from him. Donovan Peoples-Jones has been going off pretty decent lately, 17.1 from him. And JT, not too bad, 15.4. Over on State Farm's side, 26.46 from Patrick Mahomes, 18 from Eckler, and some other fairly average performances. Unfortunate with Kadarius Toney getting 0 points because of that injury, but Colin got the victory in this one, 98.35 to 86.51, which will move us on to what I think is the last matchup of the week, which is correct, which is Abby versus Caleb. Very close matchup. I believe it is the closest matchup of this past week. On Caleb's side, 26.64 from Daniel Jones, that is, and it was interesting. On Monday, Bree and I watched this movie called Mr. Nobody, and there's a person in that movie called Daniel Jones. I'm like, I wonder if it's the football player. It wasn't. Anyway, David Montgomery, 21.1 points, so pretty good. Negative 0.8 from Naheem Hine, but that's not good. And Joshua Palmer, pretty good, 30.6, so very good stuff from him. Over on Abby's side, Derek Carr, 20.28. Aaron Jones, 13 points, 22.4 from Deebs. That is Deebo Samuel. And 16 points from the Cowboys defense. In the end, Abby got the victory, 124.38 to Caleb's 120.64. And before we jump into this week's matchups, of course, we've got to run through the hot off the press power rankings. So, starting in 14th place, obviously we've got myself, and then we've got 13 Caleb, 12 Fiala, Lincoln at 11, 10 T-Corn, 9 Colin, 8 Derek, Michael 7, Abby at 6, State Farm at 5, Sam 4, Adam 3, Brian's at 2, and number 1, Bruce. So, good stuff with those power rankings, which will bring us on to this week's matchups. First, me versus Fiala. I'm currently on a 1-loss streak, worst team in the league, and Fiala's on a 1-win streak, on the 12th ranked team in the league. So we'll see how this stuff goes. Justin Fields currently questionable. Hopefully he can play for me. Otherwise, I'll have to pick up a quarterback off the bench or off the waivers. My pretty solid running backs are Dameon Pierce and hopefully starter for Tampa Bay with Rashad White. So we'll see how well those guys can do. David Njoku hopefully returning to the lineup this week. and we'll see if Treylon Burks can keep what he had last week going. And then over on Fiala's side, obviously Josh Allen, very good. Pretty scared of him. Obviously, he's probably the best quarterback in the league, and I'm sure he'll just continue to be great. And then some other very good players in Devonta Smith, DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, and Keenan Allen. We'll see if Keenan can continue being healthy this week, as he, I believe, had his first game played last week since week 1. So we'll see how all of that turns out. I will be picking Fiala in this matchup because, of course, I am. Because my team is not good. Moving on to the next matchup, Michael versus Abby. A couple teams right in the middle of the pack here, with some middle of the pack quarterbacks, and you wouldn't expect them to be near each other. I assume in the rankings, Lamar Jackson and Derek Carr. Lamar definitely underperforming, and Derek Carr probably overperforming thanks to Devontae Adams. There are some pretty solid running backs in this matchup as well, with Abby's Aaron Jones and Cordero Patterson, and Michael's Dalvin Cook and Ramondre Stevenson. And a number of those players, Michael's, that is, will be playing on Thanksgiving, also playing on Thanksgiving is Amon-Ra St. Brown and Devin Singletary. So you'll be having 4 players going on your defense. So that should be fun Thanksgiving for you. Hopefully, it turns out well. Abby also does have some players playing on Thanksgiving. The Cowboys defense, T.J. Hawkinson and Gabe Davis. So could be a very high-scoring start to this matchup. And the player that I was thinking of earlier is George Pickens. He's the one that Kenny Pickett has eyes for. I do think this one will be pretty close, but I will be giving this victory to Michael. Moving us on to the next matchup, which is Caleb versus Bruce. As I mentioned, Jalen Hurts is Bruce's quarterback. He's pretty solid. But Daniel Jones, the character from Mr. Nobody, has been playing pretty well too. Just like the last matchup, there are some very solid running backs in this matchup, and Nick Chubb and Tony Pollard for Bruce, and Caleb's David Montgomery and Alvin Kamara. Very solid receivers on Bruce's side as well, with Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, and then Darnell Mooney and DeAndre Swift in the flex. So very, very solid team over there on Bruce's side. Caleb, not too shabby with some of his players as well. Mike Williams did leave early from that game with injury, so we'll see if he can get back into the action. But in his place, Joshua Palmer, who is also on your roster, did have an incredible game. Number of Thanksgiving players, I won't run through them all, but I will be picking Bruce in this matchup, and I do not think it will be that close. Which will bring us on to the next matchup, which is T-Corn versus Colin. A couple banged-up quarterbacks in this matchup. Kyler Murray, who missed last week, obviously, and Justin Herbert, who has been playing, underperforming, but playing, has been injured, though, in the last couple of weeks. Solid running backs, again, on this team, on this matchup. Michael Carter and Jonathan Taylor over on Colin's side, and Jamal Williams and Saquon Barkley. Both players playing on Thanksgiving, so you'll see a lot of Thanksgiving players in these matchups, with there being 6 teams playing on Thanksgiving. CeeDee Lamb, a very, very good player, and Amari Cooper, a former teammate of CeeDee, also playing very well lately. Then there's the touchdown machine, as of late, Christian Watson over there on T-Corn's side as well, and touchdown he got one last week. Allen Robinson over there for Colin, and Donovan Peoples-Jones has been playing pretty well too lately. In this matchup, I will be picking T-Corn, and I do think it will be a fairly close matchup, which will bring us on to a quick sip of my soda. Which will bring us on to our next matchup, Lincoln versus State Farm. Couple of very good quarterbacks in this matchup: Dak Prescott and Patrick Mahomes, and then two of the top running backs in the league: Christian McCaffrey over on Lincoln's side, and Austin Eckler over on State Farm's side, and some other pretty solid players over on Lincoln's side. Chase Claypool, talent-wise, is pretty good, I think, but maybe not so much in the production. Of course, though, there is Mark Andrews, who's very, very good. And, yeah. And then over on State Farm's side, some pretty solid players as well. Jalen Waddle and Mike Evans. Pretty good stuff over there with those two players. And then, just some other players as well. So, in this matchup, I will be picking State Farm, and I do think it will be a fairly close matchup, which will bring us on to our penultimate matchup of this week. I'm going to turn this light on. That helps a little bit. That'll bring us to our penultimate matchup of the week, Derek versus Adam. A couple quarterbacks, as always. Kirk Cousins and Joe Burrow. I would say Joe Burrow is definitely better. And then the running backs on Adam's side, I definitely think are better, and Josh Jacobs and Joe Mixon. If Joe Mixon doesn't play, though, however, that could be an interesting situation as he is dealing with a concussion. But the running backs over on Derek's side aren't too bad either. We've got James Conner and Elijah Mitchell. The receiver matchup, I believe, is pretty even. You could argue the best receiver in the league in terms of fantasy is Stephon Diggs over on Derek's side, and also Michael Gallup, who's also very solid. But then there's A.J. Brown and Curtis Samuel over there on Adam's side, and obviously A.J. Brown is one of the top receivers in the league as well. Underrated, I would say, tight ends in this matchup, and Juwan Johnson and Pat Freiermuth. Don't know how old Juwan is, but this is just Pat's second year, and so he's definitely got a bright future ahead of him, I would say. And some stout defenses in this matchup as well. The Philadelphia Eagles over on Derek's side, and the San Francisco 49ers over there on Adam's side. I will be picking Adam in this matchup, and I will be wagering to bet that this matchup will not be all that close. And that'll bring us on to the final matchup of the week, of this Thanksgiving week, which is Brian versus Sam. So, a couple of elder statesman quarterbacks in this matchup, and Aaron Rodgers and Marcus Mariota. Mariota's obviously not really near Rodgers' age, but he's been in the league for 7-8 years now. But so there are some pretty solid running backs in this matchup, though. Ken Walker and Derrick Henry over on Brian's side, and Najee Harris and Melvin Gordon, who currently is not on a roster, so I'm sure Sam will make some maneuvering around that. Zeke is currently in his flex, and I don't have your bench in this screenshot here, which is how I've got these matchups. But I'm sure you will fill in the lineup with players that are actually on teams. Couple of Vikings receivers in this matchup as well. Over on Brian's side, Justin Jefferson, and Sam's side, Adam Thielen. So see how well those two can balance each other out in the matchup. This week, a couple other solid receivers, and T. Higgins over on Sam's, and Terry McLaurin, Chris Olave over on Brian's side, and Tyler Boyd's also there. Oh, and Travis Kelce, I guess I'll mention him. Probably I think the number one tight end on the season so far, and some decent defenses as well in this matchup. In Brian's, the Denver Broncos, and Sam's Baltimore Ravens. So in this matchup, I will be picking Sam, and I do think that it will be a close one. So that will do it for this week's episode of the Mishpo. I hope you enjoyed this new scenery. As I mentioned before, I like to change it up every week. I've only had, I believe, one repeat location, which is my nice comfy chair in the living room at my house. But yeah, this is my first ever car episode. Obviously I can't be, it would be dangerous, to say the least, for me to be doing these while driving. So I'd like to thank Bree, and Bree, if you have any closing thoughts, on this episode, or on this episode.
I wasn't listening.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that'll do it for this week's episode. I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving, and with that, thank you, and
thank you.
Alrighty, we made it to Bree's mom's, and this is what it looks like. It's much darker than it was earlier, thanks to good old winter and daylight savings. And we got our can here, and oh, what the heck? What's this? Looks like a bush snuck in there. How did that happen? Well, regardless, we will still flip it, and we will call Lincoln. So close. Happy Thanksgiving.